Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we will be discussing the clinical use of intravenous albumin in adult patients. We'll explore when to use it, why it works, and how to administer it safely. Before we begin, please note that this presentation is for medical education purposes only and is not intended as medical advice for patient care or clinical decision-making. By the end of this session, you will be able to understand albumin's physiological role, differentiate between the 5% and 25% formulations, identify evidence-based indications for its use, recognize common pitfalls and inappropriate uses, and apply key safety considerations in your clinical practice. So, what exactly is albumin? It is the most abundant plasma protein in the human body, accounting for more than half of all proteins in our plasma. It's synthesized in the liver and has a half-life of about 15 to 20 days. Interestingly, the majority of our body's albumin, over 60%, resides in the extravascular compartment with a normal turnover of about 15 grams per day. How does albumin work? Its primary and most well-known function is to maintain colloid oncotic pressure. Think of it as a sponge in your bloodstream. It draws fluid from the surrounding interstitial space back into the intravascular space, helping to maintain blood volume. Beyond that, it's a crucial carrier protein transporting hormones, enzymes, and medications. It also has antioxidant properties and helps maintain the integrity of our capillary membranes. When we talk about giving albumin, we have two main formulations, 5% and 25%. The 5% solution is isooncotic, meaning it has the same oncotic pressure as plasma. It provides volume expansion equal to the volume you infuse. In contrast, the 25% solution is hyperoncotic with 5 times the oncotic pressure of plasma. This means it pulls in a significant amount of fluid from the interstitial space, expanding the intravascular volume by 3.5 to 5 times the amount infused. So, when should we reach for 5% albumin? This formulation is ideal for rapid volume resuscitation in patients who are hypovolemic or intravascularly depleted. It's also used in plasma exchange procedures. A key clinical pearl here is that 5% albumin provides volume expansion approximately equal to the infused volume, and it does so quickly within about 15 minutes. Now, let's consider 25% albumin. This is our choice for sustained expansion, especially in patients who require fluid or sodium restriction, such as those with hypoproteinemia and generalized edema, nephrotic syndrome, or chronic cirrhotic hypervolemia. The clinical pearl for 25% albumin is its powerful hyperoncotic effect, which mobilizes interstitial fluid and produces a volume expansion 3.5 to 5 times greater than the infused volume. Let's move into the core, evidence-based indications. First up is large volume paracentesis in patients with cirrhotic ascites, specifically when more than 5 liters of fluid are removed. Here, albumin is given to prevent post-paracentesis circulatory dysfunction, a condition that can lead to hypovolemia, hyponatremia, and kidney impairment. This is a strong recommendation supported by high-quality evidence. Our second major indication is spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, or SBP. In these patients, giving albumin along with antibiotics has been shown to reduce the risk of renal impairment and mortality. The American Gastroenterological Association strongly recommends its use to prevent acute kidney injury, but it's typically reserved for patients who already have some degree of kidney or severe liver impairment, as defined by the criteria you see here. The landmark 1999 study by Sort and colleagues in the New England Journal of Medicine was pivotal in establishing this mortality benefit. The third key indication is hepatorenal syndrome, specifically HRSAKI type 1. It is critical to understand that albumin here is an adjunctive therapy. It must be combined with a vasoconstrictor like terlipressin, norepinephrine, or a combination of midodrine and octreotide. The confirm and reverse studies both demonstrated that this combination approach is effective. Remember, albumin alone is not sufficient for treating hepatorenal syndrome. Beyond those big 3, there are a few other accepted uses for albumin. These include fluid replacement during plasma exchange, managing severe ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, and as an adjunct to diuretics for edema in acute nephrosis. It can also be considered as a second-line agent for volume resuscitation in sepsis or septic shock, though the evidence here is less robust. Now for a word of caution. It's easy to think that if some albumin is good, more must be better. The recent ATTIRE trial showed us this is not the case. In this study, hospitalized cirrhotic patients who received daily albumin infusions to maintain a target level actually had no benefit and experienced increased risks, including pulmonary edema and respiratory infections. The key takeaway is that aggressive, routine albumin replacement in hospitalized cirrhotics can cause harm. The evidence for long-term albumin therapy is mixed and highlights the importance of patient selection. The ATTIRE trial, which looked at outpatients with early decompensated cirrhosis, found that long-term albumin improved mortality and reduced complications. However, the mock trial, which studied patients with more advanced cirrhosis awaiting transplant, showed no benefit. This tells us that the potential benefit is likely in earlier stages of the disease, not in advanced end-stage liver failure. This next point is a critical red flag. Albumin should be avoided in patients with traumatic brain injury. A subgroup analysis of the large SAFE study, published by Myberg in 2007, found that albumin administration was associated with an increased risk of mortality in TBI patients, possibly by worsening cerebral edema. This is a contraindication. For fluid resuscitation in traumatic brain injury, you should use crystalloids like normal saline. This brings us to some common pitfalls and inappropriate uses. It is crucial to remember that a low albumin level, or hypoalbuminemia, by itself is not an indication for an albumin infusion. It is also not a nutritional supplement, and there is no evidence to support its use for treating hyponatremia or hepatic encephalopathy. Stick to the evidence-based indications we've discussed. To summarize the absolute contraindications, you should never give albumin to a patient with a known hypersensitivity, severe anemia, or cardiac failure with a normal or increased intravascular volume. You should also use it with extreme caution in patients with conditions like decompensated heart failure, hypertension, or existing pulmonary edema, as the volume expansion can be dangerous. When you do administer albumin, you need to monitor for potential adverse reactions. Common reactions can include flushing, changes in blood pressure, or a rash. More seriously and rarely, patients can experience anaphylactic shock, so you must be prepared. The most common clinically significant issue to watch for is volume overload, which can lead to pulmonary edema. Here are a few practical tips for administration. Albumin is for intravenous use only. For patients not in shock, the infusion rate should not exceed 1 to 2 milliliters per minute to avoid rapid fluid shifts. And a critical safety warning: never dilute 5% albumin with sterile water, as this can cause severe hemolysis and acute kidney failure. Monitoring is key to safe administration. Keep a close eye on the patient's hemodynamic status, including blood pressure and pulse. Track their volume status through urine output and watch for clinical signs of fluid overload, such as jugular venous distension, new rales on lung exam, or worsening edema. Be vigilant for headache and dyspnea, which can be early signs of hypervolemia. So, let's put it all together in a simple decision framework. First, ask, is there a specific, evidence-based indication? If yes, proceed to step 2. Are there any contraindications, most notably traumatic brain injury? If it's safe to proceed, then finally, choose your formulation based on your goal. 5% for rapid resuscitation, or 25% for sustained expansion in a fluid-restricted patient. Let's quickly review the most important points. 1. Albumin works by increasing oncotic pressure. 2. 5% is for rapid resuscitation, while 25% is for sustained expansion. 3. The strongest evidence supports its use in large-volume paracentesis, spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, and hepatorenal syndrome when combined with vasoconstrictors. 4. Remember the red flag: avoid albumin in traumatic brain injury. 5. A low albumin level alone is never an indication for infusion. And 6. Always monitor for fluid overload. In conclusion, the use of albumin is nuanced. It is a powerful tool when used correctly but can be harmful when used inappropriately. Always review the latest guidelines, consider the individual patient context, and apply your clinical judgment. The evidence is constantly evolving, so it's our responsibility to stay updated. Thank you for your time and attention. Continue to question, learn, and apply evidence-based medicine in your practice. Remember, this lecture is for educational purposes only. Always consult current guidelines and your institutional protocols for patient care decisions.